A marriage might be a fragile thing in that it usually takes many years to make it work but only minutes or hours of talking to crush. Like many other families, my wife, Johanna, our 7-year-old son, Ken, 5-year-old daughter, Moa, and me, Glenn Anderson, had a pleasant family night one recent Friday. Johanna had phoned me at work earlier that day and said that she was taking some vacation that afternoon to do some shopping. So she'd be home later than usual. Coming home sexily dressed in a red top, a short black skirt, and with her nice legs in dark brown stockings and high heels, she was almost 2 hours late. But she had no shopping bags with her and said, "I didn't find anything I wanted." For several reasons we hadn't had any during the whole week, which was starting to become an unpleasant habit. So I expected this evening to end up in a great way for Johanna and me. First we had the usual Friday family fun with the kids, and everything went as expected. The kids had a good time, and when they were sleeping in their beds, Johanna and I had a rather romantic dinner that I had fixed in advance. In the bedroom, when we undressed for bed, she surprised me by having her beautiful underwear on and stay-up stockings instead of pantyhose. At first, I was both happy and very horny because I thought she had done it to compensate me for the lousy week. And for getting me in the mood for some great you-know-what. But when I tried to begin, she surprised me again by spurning all of my attempts at foreplay. And then she made her recently usual Friday excuses. "Please forgive me, but I'm too tired to think about anything like that after a hard week and a busy day. Do you mind if I just take a quick shower and get some sleep?" I was really disappointed and said, "What damn busy day? Some shopping, Friday fun with the family, and some whining and dining with me. Is that such a damn bit of hard, boring work for you? Wouldn't it be better for you to take that shower after giving me my weekly mercy F?" Instead of bothering to give me a reply, she went straight into the shower, where she forgot about having a quick shower. When she was finally back, I was already in bed and my back to her side of the bed. Apparently she had changed her mind since she said, "Okay, I'll give in to your nagging, but I'm too tired for anything beside a quick, since that means so much to you." "No, it doesn't mean AS any longer. Sorry for disturbing you if you already received all you wanted from somebody else. No need to care about me, I'm only the stupid husband," I said, and remained lying with my back against her. "Somebody sure turned into a very sour mood, but it's up to you. Shut up with your damn accusations or you'll have to pay for them," she said. But I didn't care to reply. Of course, I couldn't sleep after my accusation. It was the first time during our marriage, so I had expected a much stronger reaction from Johanna. My thoughts began circling around what had happened between my usually lovely wife and me. The first question was, had I done something wrong to cause her to stop loving me, or had she found something better? But after much thinking I remained unable to get any clue about what it could be. The next question was why Johanna had been dressed up in her underwear for work and shopping. Or if she had been shopping at all because she hadn't bought anything. And that never happened before, either. Therefore, and after much thinking back and forth, my only reasonable guess was that she had been involved in some quite different matter. She probably had it with a lover during the busy shopping time, and had not used protection. She didn't dare risk me finding out. I began thinking about our life during past few months, and after some thought there was no doubt that due to headaches and bad days on the job, there had been far less times than there used to be. After all of those bad feelings, I went to the kitchen for a cup of tea and to use the calendar in my smartphone to refresh my memory. I noticed traces of a pattern in our dwindling life that now only happened on Saturday evenings and a few times on Sunday mornings. It was clear that something had gone wrong between Johanna and me, and that the weekdays were obviously earmarked for somebody else. This week was her first with extra sexy underwear and a late arrival home. So she had obviously been to some kind of party or celebration. However, whatever it was, this had to be brought out to daylight, even if the price would be our marriage. One of Johanna's women magazines had recently featured a simple Gallup poll where about 50% of the married women confessed to cheating. It got me thinking about the rumors of how differently cheated husbands acted after they found out they had been C. A small number of the husbands were turned on by a cheating wife and wanted her to do it again. Some husbands didn't care as whether she F on the side or not. A few husbands ended up in jail after having been too violent in their revenge actions. Poor wimpy husbands cried when the wife was out cheating but didn't dare to do anything about it. Some of the average husbands could forgive their spouse for a one-time mistake but would dump her if she had a lasting affair. I must say that the last opinion sounded best for me. In the morning, Johanna skipped making sour comments about our failed episode last evening, and our family went shopping. Things went my way when a tabloid newspaper had an article on the entire front page about how one of the best-known female singers in this country dumped her husband after only 2 years following their big wedding. She told the whole nation that he had cheated and she could not live in a marriage without trust. Of course I bought that paper. During our coffee break back home I showed Johanna the front page and said, I must agree with her 100% and say that it is better to go away immediately than to stay in a relationship with a cheater. Do you agree that our marriage seems to have some serious problems that need to be cleared up as soon as possible? Are you really magnifying our little problem last evening to that level? Is it still bothering you so much that I might be tired sometimes? She said with an angry expression on her face. I had a strong feeling that it must be now or never for getting our problems out into the light of day. Although there was not the slightest real evidence against her, only circumstantial evidence, I decided to take all the expected consequences and accuse her of cheating. I replied to her comments with, yes, it is still bothering me that you have begun to be tired weekly on a regular schedule. And it is still confusing to me why you went to work and to the so-called shopping trip dressed like a high-class WH in your sexiest underwear? Not much of a shopping trip either, was it? What the hell does that mean? Is it my fault that I didn't find anything of interest? She shouted. I'm sure that you found something else of greater interest. Please correct me if I am wrong, but I'm convinced that you are dating some creep on the side. Aren't you? I can't see any other possible reasons for your underwear or why you've been refusing to have any with me at all on weekdays except a poor F on Saturdays. You must be afraid I would find out, I said, staring her right in the eyes and noting a second of fear or guilt. That made me sure I was on the right track. But a feeling wasn't enough to just dump her. Johanna understood that I wasn't joking and she was somewhat shocked. She couldn't think of any nasty comment, so she said only, what's the matter with you? Have you turned crazy from reading that scandal newspaper? I continued, isn't it high time to get all of the skeletons out of the closet and go on with our lives, now? Be sure that sooner or later I'll find out the truth about your affair, so there's no reason to throw away any more of our time until that happens. Isn't it much better for both of us to face the truth and go on by doing what is best for our lives right now? She was still shaken after her surprise and didn't have much to say. You must see ghosts in the daylight. I have never cheated on you, and is it so damn strange that I'm tired on a Friday evening after a long busy week? Is it? Sexy as a high-class WH for the job and frigid as an ice tap in the marriage. That seems a bit strange to me. I replied, and she left the room in anger and avoided me the next few hours. Later that Saturday evening, our friends Melissa and Eric, who had kids the same ages as ours, invited our family to their house for dinner. We decided to go although our quarrel was still unresolved. Everything went fine during the first hour until Melissa asked Johanna and me if we would go to a very popular show in the capital city with them. She had gotten 4 very scarce tickets, and we were her first choices to be offered 2 of them. I surprised everybody by saying, I'm very grateful, Melissa, indeed, but I regret to say that for the time being, Johanna and I are living one day at a time. So we can't make any plans for the future. 3 surprised people stared at me and Johanna shouted, what in the hell do you mean by that? Just what I said earlier today. The skeletons must be out before we can go forward any further, I said. Melissa looked at me and asked, what's the problem? Has something happened? Don't ask me, the husband is always the last one to know, I said. Johanna said, he is accusing me of cheating because he didn't get it last night. Melissa smiled and asked me, is that the whole problem? No, of course not. Our problem is much more serious than that. Very strong circumstantial evidence has convinced me that Johanna is cheating on me. So I'm ready to give you all a fair deal here and now. If I'm wrong about Johanna, I promise go with you to that show, pay for all tickets, hotel rooms, and all the meals for the 4 of us with money from my gambling account. But if I can show to you, here and now, evidence of Johanna's cheating, I will file for divorce Monday morning. I've had enough of her crap. Eric said, that would be fine, but I doubt you really mean what you said. Melissa said, we are 3 witnesses to your promise. I'm convinced that Johanna is innocent of your accusation and look forward to receiving your kind offer. Johanna had a smirk on her face but didn't say anything. So I said, I'm serious and promise to keep my word. I went to the hall, took Johanna's handbag and gave it to her and said, Johanna, I know for sure that your cell phone is in that handbag. Would you please give it to me and tell me the password? If the phone is clean from any evidence about cheating, I promise to keep my word about the show trip. But if I find anything compromising on it, or if you refuse to give it to me before opening it and deleting something from its memory, I will regard the phone as evidence with information about your lover. And I will file for divorce on Monday. This offer is valid for 3 minutes and only if you'll give me your unopened or undamaged phone. I took up my own phone, put the timer to 3 minutes and began waiting. 3 people stared at me and Melissa shouted at Johanna, give him the damn phone. Eric shouted, what the hell are you waiting for, Johanna? But I didn't get her phone because she took her handbag and rushed out of the house without saying a word. Both Melissa and Eric stared at me with very surprised looks on their faces until Melissa asked me, "Did you know what she had on her phone? What are you going to do now?" No, I didn't know because I don't know her password. As I said before, I'm probably the last one to know anything about this matter. You should have heard some gossip, haven't you, Melissa? I asked. Melissa said, "I swear. I've heard nothing at all, but I promise to let you know if something comes my way." What are you going to do? What can I do? Going home to my children and then keeping my word, and divorcing my cheating wife, I said. Eric asked, "Would you have really paid for the whole trip if Johanna had been innocent?" Oh yes, I said a silent prayer that she would give me the damn phone because my marriage means much more to me than my gambling money. Johanna has been my true love and I would rather skip my gambling than to lose Johanna. But terminating the marriage was her choice, not mine, I replied. Eric continued, "I didn't know you were such a hard gambler, daring to take such big risks. Please remember that I'm a lousy gambler who lost the game and my marriage. Probably even Johanna will be a loser if her lover boy is married and doesn't take good care of her. But I'd rather be a lousy loser than a poor C accepting a cheating wife. My pride can't take that kind of crap." I took my children and went home. Just as expected, there was no Johanna there. But to my great surprise, she was back 1 hour later with very red eyes, so it was obvious she had been crying. She asked if we could talk about our problems. I accepted, and when the kids were sleeping we sat down at the kitchen table and she began. "Are you happy now after making me look like a cheating S with our friends? It is high time for the truth. Are you a shameless S and cheating on me?" "No, I'm not any shameless S, but I can't deny any longer about being involved in a fling with another man." "Are you happy now because you don't have to pay for Melissa and Eric's show trip?" "Am I happy? Hell no, not at all, because today is one of the worst days in my whole life. So there is hardly any reason for happiness. I can only feel great disappointment and emptiness after losing what I, in my simple mind, thought was a happy family. Why in the hell did you do that to me and to our poor innocent children? They are the biggest losers in this mess." She said, "Please don't burn all the bridges before we have talked about what we can do to save our marriage. I love you very much and there are still great possibilities for us in our marriage if we calm down and give it a fair try." I asked, "Why the hell did you do that? Have I been such a bad husband and lover to you that you need to be with some horny W-monger? Or are there more than one? Please understand that it is only a once-in-the-lifetime little romantic fling that doesn't limit my love for you and our children. Of course my family is my first choice and I promise to be your faithful loving wife again when this fuss is over." "Who is he? Or they? How long have you been F on the side and obviously doing it without using you know what? Have you even done it in our bed?" I asked. "Of course it is only one man, he and I have strong feelings for each other. I can promise that we really did our best to resist all temptations for a long time. But during a conference about 2 months ago it became impossible for us to deny our feelings any longer and we went the whole way. Although our feelings are very strong, we agreed that it would be only a secret fling for a limited time. It doesn't matter what he means to me now, you are my only real love and the man I want to share the future with. I can honestly promise that he is only a bracket in my life, but he is not a W-monger. And for the time being it doesn't matter who he is. I can promise you that he has never been here in our house," Johanna replied. "It's a lie, pure stinking lie. Of course it matters. It matters very much indeed, and you can be sure I'll find that snake who soiled my family and give him what he really deserves. If he is married, I'm going to ask his wife why her a whole husband doesn't have it with her during the weekdays. And if that does happen and he gives her what he obviously forbid you give to me, it will be high time for him to get a treatment that makes him regret that he was ever born." I continued, "Did you go straight to him after you left Melissa and Eric's to put a stop to the shameful affair, or are he and you planning to celebrate that you are now free and single? Now you don't have to waste your time with me for the weekly Saturday Mercy F. Isn't the future great now that you can be his, and only his, legal WH, or at least one of his now?" "No, I haven't seen him today. I only spoke a few words with him by phone, so he knows that you know our secret and are not happy about it. That's all I can say about him so far. I am not a WH nor a single because I'm married to my beloved husband. I love you very much and really hope our marriage is strong enough to survive this very temporary problem. Please try to calm down and understand that any violence from you against him would be fatal for you and for our family," she said. I had never regarded Johanna to be stupid, but now I began to fear that her lover might have her brains out. I replied, "May I guess that means your dam is married and you didn't want to disturb him with his family? You don't seem to have any problem ruining your own family. It is obvious you care more about Loverboy and his family than you care about me and our children. Don't you? Or is he blackmailing or forcing you to be his?" I asked her. Johanna began sobbing, No, it's nothing like that. As I said before, it is only an innocent short-time romantic fling that will be ended soon. May I guess that you the shameless didn't put an immediate stop to your cheating even though you were caught? Did I get it right that you intend to keep obeying that damn pimp just as if nothing has happened? Be sure that that creep won't be treated with soft gloves. Now she was worried while saying, please calm down and remember that my friend has powerful friends, so any violence will cause serious problems for our family. I will be your loving wife and promise to be faithful all my life when our love has solved all the problems my little innocent fling has caused in our marriage. She replied without saying yes or no to the question of whether she terminated the affair, and as it didn't matter, I didn't care to ask again. He says violence will cause us problems? Is your lover threatening me? Be sure he will pay a high price. You promise to be a faithful wife, faithful to whom? Faithful to your lover? Can you deny that for the time being, that slimy snake is the number one in your sick mind? That you've obeyed his demand to deny you know what to your husband during the weekdays so he could have a fresh when he wanted? Shall I be thankful to him for the damn mercy he allowed you to give me on Saturday evenings? Dear Johanna, don't you see what a disgusting cheap he's forced you to be? I don't care about his mighty cohorts, not even if the real devil is among them. Be sure, he will pay a high price. I shouted as loud as I could, which woke up and scared our children. Obviously Johanna understood now that I would never regard her cheating as some innocent romantic fling. So she began to fear the consequences of her adultery and rushed to the bedroom, crying out loudly. After an almost sleepless night in the spare room, I went out early on Sunday morning. I left a short note to Johanna saying, gone fishing and will be back home late in the evening. Of course I wasn't in the mood for any fishing. Instead, my goal was driving to a small town on the coast where a guest house owned by one of my childhood friends had a room, booked with a text message last evening, waiting for me. I got there in time to have breakfast before having a good sleep until a pleasant lunch with my host. After that, I felt much better, so it was time to have a long walk and do some thinking about the future. I was disappointed in myself for being a naive wimp who hadn't seen any pattern in Johanna's excuses for no thing and never suspected her for doing what she did. But then I defended that with the realization that except for the lack of, there had never been any other clues. However, I had to praise myself for accusing her as soon as I saw the first sign, the late homecoming from an obviously faked shopping trip, in sexy underwear. I had been right, and to my total surprise, Johanna had confessed her cheating less than 24 hours after my first accusation. Although I never had any real evidence of her cheating, I was able to get her confession without resorting to any violence. If her cheating had been limited only to that shopping Friday, we had a fair chance to go forward together, even if it would take a long time. But since it was an ongoing affair and instead of immediately ending it, she had been silly enough to spew her mumbo-jumbo about ending her innocent romantic fling soon. That was pure crap to my ears. My cell phone had been switched off the whole time, so after a while, I sat down on a big stone to check it. 5 missed calls from Johanna and 3 text messages, all equal, saying, "Darling, I love you and we have to talk. Please call me as soon as possible. Johanna." I sent her a reply, "I'll be back late so we'll talk tomorrow." Gee. No nonsensical closing, such as, "darling" or "love." Then the phone was switched off again. Though a divorce would be a bad matter for our children, I decided that it was the only possible solution after Johanna's cheating and letting her lover dictate the thing in our marriage. Though Johanna had not confessed to the latter aspect and would probably never admit that I was right in that matter, I was 100% sure about the humiliation. When checking the phone later in the evening, there were several new missed calls and a voice message from a sobbing Johanna. "Darling, please call me as soon as possible because I regret and want to confess that I have been a shameless stupid bee the last few months. I'm sorry for all the harm that I have caused for you and our children. Of course, my fling is over, so now you, my beloved husband, are, and you will always be my only love. Please call me, please, my darling." I regarded it as a 2 months, too late gallows confession and didn't care. If she had stopped the cheating immediately after the conference, it would have remained her secret. Or had her fake shopping trip been the only time, we could have had a chance. But not after 2 months. Though she obviously had ended it now, that didn't mean any longer. I was relieved to find Johanna sleeping when I arrived back home. I slept in the spare room and left early for my job before she was awake. I left a short message on the kitchen table, "Johanna, I'll speak to you during the day." As soon as the courthouse office opened on Monday morning, I was there for the divorce forms. I filled them out at my job and went to Johanna's workplace to get her to sign them. She refused to do that and began to cry loudly. I left her office, went back to the courthouse and filed them without her signature. It wouldn't matter very much, probably only a slight delay of a couple of weeks. Johanna didn't come home after work, but her older sister, Annie, rang me and said she needed talk with me about Johanna as soon as possible. I invited her come to my home at once, and she accepted. Annie came and said that a totally wrecked Johanna was at her parents' place. Annie wanted to hear the truth of what had happened between Johanna and me. So I told her, Johanna confessed to cheating on me with a lover and obviously intended to go on with her affair. She didn't even stop it when talking with him after I found the evidence about her cheating. There's no way I can accept a wife who intended to continue a lover. That's why a divorce is the only possible solution. I wonder if he is married, and if he is, does his wife accept their affair? Don't ask me, you better ask his wife. Her name is Marie-Helene Broman, and I think you might know her, or at least have met her, Annie said. Now it was clear that Johanna was cheating on me with a Kenneth Broman, who was responsible for the accounting department at her job. I had met him a few times and had the impression of a slightly feminine man who cared very much about his clothes. Having a serious talk with Kenneth and Marie-Helene Broman was a good idea, so I asked Annie to babysit while I paid a short visit to the Bromans. To my great pleasure, she accepted with the expected advice, "Please understand that your children need you now, so don't do anything you will regret later." I took a drive to Kenneth's house, located in an area with a good reputation. A few seconds after ringing the bell, the front door was opened by a 7-year-old girl who said, "Yes, Mom is," to my question of whether her mom and dad were at home. When Marie-Helene came to the door, I introduced myself and told her that we were sharing a problem I wanted to discuss with her. She surprised me in that she was a very good-looking woman who invited me into her kitchen and to sit down in a chair at the table. I did and said, "I regret to say that I'm coming with some bad information for you. My wife Johanna, who works for the same company as your husband, has confessed that they are involved in an affair and have cheated on you and me during the last 2 months." She turned pale and asked, "Are you sure, really sure?" "Yes, I am, because your husband persuaded my wife to limit me by having it only during Saturdays to make sure she was a horny-ass during their obviously kinky Friday sessions. Which is what made me suspicious, and she didn't deny the affair when I accused her of cheating. Later that evening, after she spoke with Kenneth, she confessed to everything. There was no remorse and no doubt at all. "By the way, where is Kenneth? I would like a word with that damn a-hole," I said. Marie-Helene paled and replied with a frightened voice, "Monday is his bowling night. What are you going to do in this sad matter?" "I'll divorce my wife, and Kenneth already knows that, because I gave my wife the divorce forms at her job today. That caused a real hullabaloo there, so I think that all her coworkers in the whole office know by now." "Did Kenneth tell you about what happened at the job, and how much do you know?" "Nothing, not a slightest clue. I know some people at Kenneth's job, but none of them cared to tell me anything, and Kenneth didn't mention that a coworker received divorce papers on the job." Marie-Helene and I agreed to share all further information, and I left her with a strange feeling. How could that stupid creep Kenneth cheat on such a lovely wife and do that with Johanna, who probably wasn't better than his own wife in any way? Back home, I told Annie about my talk with Kenneth's wife. It was up to her if she wanted to tell Johanna about what I had done. And it was up to Johanna to contact me to discuss our divorce. The next morning on the job brought a real surprise when a Camilla Lindberg rang me and suggested meeting at lunch to talk about some important matter regarding Johanna and me. I knew she was a divorced, handsome woman, and I got curious about what she wanted, so it was easy to accept her invitation. We met at a small restaurant, and after some polite small talk she went straight to her point. "I've heard that you and your wife Johanna have filed for divorce. I am going in the opposite direction. I intend to rent out my furnished apartment for some time until I feel sure that I've done the right thing by moving in with my boyfriend, Alf. That apartment would be perfect place for you or Johanna." It surprised me that the rumors of my divorce had spread so fast. Of course I was interested, very much interested, indeed. Camilla continued discussing the fair rent and other advantages that were included. The reason she made her offer to me was that she trusted both Johanna and me to take care of her apartment. Back at work, I rang Annie at her job and told her that I had obtained a furnished apartment for Johanna to use until she moved in together with Kenneth Broman somewhere. But Annie said that would never happen because Kenneth had gone totally crazy when he came home from his bowling and found his packed suitcases in his driveway and his front door protected by a man in a Securitas uniform. During a frantic call to Johanna, he had cursed and accused her of being a whore that had destroyed his marriage. Annie was interrupted by some urgent matter and promised to see me at my house later that evening. She came as expected and told me the latest news about Johanna. She had almost collapsed after Kenneth's frantic call and took additional days off from her job. Annie, who was married and living only a few hundred meters from her parents, had spent a lot of time with her parents supporting Johanna. That was when Johanna told her everything about the affair with Kenneth. The interesting news for me was that Johanna and Kenneth used a discreet small apartment near a furniture store as their love nest when they took extra long lunches on Fridays and had even done it on 2 Wednesdays. According to Kenneth, the rent was shared by a secret gang of businessmen, who had a booking system on the web. Kenneth had bragged that it was both much cheaper and a much more discreet solution than hotel rooms. Johanna had even confessed to Annie about the faked shopping Friday when Kenneth and she had celebrated his upcoming birthday, the following Sunday, with a trip out of town to a very famous old inn. It was some distance away where they had a long lunch and an intensive session in a room that one of the previous kings had spent the night. Johanna understood that her underwear was the mistake that made me suspicious enough to put an end to our marriage. Before Annie left, she packed a suitcase with clothes and some other things for Johanna that she wanted. I told her that I was ready to talk with Johanna about our ongoing divorce and our children as soon as she wanted. It was also obvious that Kenneth really did have powerful friends. I needed to find something that would turn them against him instead of helping him against me. After much thinking later that evening, I got, in my opinion, a great idea. I phoned my old friend, Anders, to get his opinion. Anders is a computer freak who can do much more than an average user like me. He gave an immediate thumbs up to my idea and promised to begin working on it immediately. The next day, after a very quick lunch, it was time to take a look at Kenneth's love nest. It was easy to find after what Annie had told me. It was on street level and had originally been an office but was now restored to a small apartment. Indeed, it was a very discreet place for secret meetings. The door was heavy wood and had both a mailbox and a small brass sign, Patent Service, which gave the impression of it still being an office. No doubt that Kenneth's gang had created a perfect place for their secret extramarital pleasures. After going back to the job, I made a call to Annie to procure her babysitter services while I went shopping after work. She had begged me to do something to Kenneth's gang. She also promised not to mention to anybody, not even to Johanna, that she had told me about the nest. Or that she babysat for me when my actions were needed at that service. Dressed in a gray overalls and a baseball cap, everybody regarded me as an average customer at the big building equipment and hardware store where I found everything I needed. Thursday evening, Anders called me and said that he was ready for action, and my reply was, "Let's go." He replied after a few minutes, "Action completed." I thanked him and promised to keep him informed of the results once I knew them. But that would probably not be very much. Early the next morning, it was time for my part of the action, which took place at the door to Kenneth Broman's nest. Dressed again in the overalls and baseball cap and using a battery-powered drill/screwdriver, I sealed the door with 12 one-way screws made of hardened steel. The next matter was a sheet of stainless steel, 50 by 30 centimeters, with bright red text. Nicely furnished room for rent in 2-hour periods. Call Kenneth Broman at phone for further information. The sign was also screwed on with the one-way hardened steel screws. One-way screws are used for unremovable safety installations. It is the specially designed head that makes the screwing impossible, but not unscrewing. The phone number was to the office where Johanna and Kenneth worked. Anders and me expected some hullabaloo at Kenneth's job because he had mailed 250 emails to their staff and to other top people in our town. The email contained a picture of the love nest door, with a Photoshop version of the new sign, and the text portion of the note read, "Dear married friend with a taste for extra benefits. I know how difficult it has been to find a 100% discreet local place for private pleasures. This is especially true if your lucky lady or stallion happens to be married. Indiscretions at local hotels have caused many expensive divorces that you can avoid by using our very discreet, nicely furnished love chamber in our town center. Rent it for 2-hour periods and get the door entry code on your smartphone. Call me during office hours for further information and additional pictures of the discreet apartment. Kenneth Broman." Why should people care when a janitor or building worker is working on a door? Nobody walked past me during the few minutes it had taken for me fix the door. Of course, Kenneth Broman and his cohorts would soon be boiling with wrath, but I didn't care about those bastards. I knew nothing of what happened until Anders called me at 11:30. He laughed and said, "You really made a big hit because you sealed in Tommy Schneider with some woman in that chamber, and they are not out yet. Nobody knows who she is, but there is a betting pool about her identity going around my job. Should I put some money in for you too?" It said that a small crowd of curious people and a militant feminist reporter from the local newspaper are waiting outside for the answer. After thinking about my best guess, Anders was asked to put in my money into the pool. The apartment had double doors, some distance from each other, so the now trapped lovers had not heard anything while I was drilling and screwing, and I couldn't feel any guilt about that. Tommy Schneider was a 53-year-old single, chairman of the local Green Party and a real troublemaker on our city council, where he has objections to most of the matters. The rumors have said he was a successful womanizer and, what he was missing between his ears, he had between his legs. Neither Anders nor me wanted to be seen in the curious crowd outside the love chamber when it was opened. But it would be a lie to deny some curiosity about the woman since the infamous Schneider had a reputation as a marriage crusher. Instead of winning any betting money, Anders and me got a real surprise when the name was made public just after 1 o'clock. She was a very gorgeous 43-year-old blonde lady named Alice Anderson who happened to be both chairman for the local Conservative Party and married to a successful businessman. An old saying says, love is blind, and after hearing with whom she spent a night with, in the love chamber, most people agreed with that saying. Later, the story came out about why the door opening had taken such a long time. And it turned into a public spectacle. Everything was blamed on Schneider because he had panicked and called the wrong people. They were the ones who spread the gossip about the door problems, before the right people were found to fix it. Alice's Conservative Party members fired her from the chairman job and her husband immediately dumped her once he heard about her spending a night with Schneider. Though very few people cared about Schneider's political doings, he had become some kind of local hero for his womanizing skills. So he usually got free drinks from some admirers when he entered a bar. Even an increasing number of females wanted to know for sure if the rumors of his skills and size were real. So that kept him busy sharing his info with his female admirers. Johanna calmed down after a while and signed the divorce papers. Then we had a serious talk about the shared custody of our children who remained living in our house. Johanna and I agreed to spend every second week in the house and in Camilla's apartment. As Christmas happened to be during my week in the house, I offered Johanna to stay in the house that week with our children and me. She slept in the guest room, but otherwise it was family life as in the good old days. I couldn't help it, but it was impossible not to miss her when we parted again. One evening that week after the kids were sleeping, and we were sitting in the living room with some wine and cheese, she began talking about Kenneth Broman. He had never expected his wife to discover his cheating. But since I let his wife know, she forced him out from their house. This caused him to have some kind of mental breakdown. He accused Johanna of being a haunted evil witch who had caused all his problems. Of course, this immediately turned their once-in-a-lifetime romantic love story into one of regrets and hate. Johanna told me about the gossip at her job. Kenneth's love chamber, the Anderson, Schneider affair and all the phone calls that were part of the email campaign, had resulted in Kenneth receiving his new nickname, the Pimp. These had all turned him into a laughingstock among their coworkers. It had caused his friends in the apartment gang to become ex-friends. They held him responsible for the scandal with poor Alice Anderson. And they even held Kenneth responsible for their economic losses and billed Kenneth for the repairs to the expensive apartment door. When he refused to pay, and his former cohorts began talking about nastier games, he quit his job and left our town for greener pastures elsewhere. The next time Johanna and I met was at a New Year's party among friends. Everything was correct and polite, and we surprised everybody by spending the evening together sharing a table with Melissa and Eric. When Johanna and I were living together, every February our family used to spend a week in the Canary Islands and the kids wanted to do that again this year, which I had promised to them. It caused me an unexpected problem when they began begging, "Please Dad, can't we let Mom come with us?" After some arguing I gave up, asked Johanna and she accepted with great pleasure. As we had booked rather late we could only get a family room at a hotel instead of an apartment, which is common there. That simply meant that Johanna and me shared a bed, but that went okay. This year all of us really did our best to have a good time during that week. Everything went fine until the last night at the hotel when I woke up and heard Johanna's silent crying. Of course I got worried and asked her, "Are you ill? What is it? Shall I call a doctor or shall we go to the hospital?" She sobbed, "No, it's nothing like that. I'm crying because I'm so grateful and happy for this week. It has been one of the happiest times in my whole life and I'll be missing it so much. Please forgive me if I woke you up." I'm not made of stone, so I hugged her and said, "Johanna, it has been a great week for all of us and if you agree, we can stop the divorce proceedings and be a family again." She looked at me almost in shock and whispered, "Oh good Lord, that is the greatest gift I have gotten since we had our children. I love you so much and you should know that I'm the happiest woman in the whole world." We couldn't wake up our children by having hot you-know-what, so Johanna, though she had never been much for and gave me the best and most memorable in my whole life. Of course, Johanna's crying wasn't the main reason for taking her back. During the whole week it had been more and more obvious to me that Johanna still was my real love. She could never be replaced by any of those whom I had dated during our separation. That's why I already had planned to suggest that we skip the divorce before we left the hotel. Although we didn't speak much about what caused our problems in the past or what we did during our separation, Johanna said she did not date anybody during that time. She believed that we were still married until the divorce became final. To my surprise, she never asked me about what I did during that time. We couldn't change the past but wouldn't make the same mistakes again. So Johanna and I preferred talking about what we should do in the future to be a happy family again.